Reverend Eugene Rivers, who many of you remember from last year. And in fact, he has, I think possibly in this room, the longest, if not the longest, but one of the longest associations with the journal. He was telling us over dinner last night that he's been reading it really since its inception. And I won't mention the full title of the first issue he came across. It would be rude, but it involves, as you can imagine, something rather explicit and the word phenomenology. That's because it's bad French philosophy, and we're certainly not going to have any of that today or going forward. But I just want to say one or two things about Eugene. I mean, from the program you can see just how many things he's involved in. He's a pastor in the Black Pentecostal churches. He works in Boston with gangs and the police, mediating constantly between them. And really he is both an intellectual and a man who is deeply rooted in the communities that he works with. And one of the most important things he's done is to try and remind intellectuals of their responsibility, and that will be the topic of his talk today. And I just want to quote from something he wrote in 1992 in the Boston Review. The title of that piece was On the Responsibility of Intellectuals in an Age of Crack. And he's got this paragraph, or this quote I want to read to you, which I find incredibly prescient and in fact prophetic. So he talks about essentially the social death of communities, including black communities, and says, but unlike the social death of formal slavery, this new social death, he writes, is fundamentally spiritual, rooted in the destruction of faith and hope. In a world without faith and hope, history and identity are themselves divested of meaning. And so, as the Christian philosopher Cornel West has argued, the future is transformed into a spectacle of nihilism and decay. It is, in the end, this profoundly spiritual nature of the current crisis that gives it its unique historical character. End quote. And I think what was true in the early 90s seems to be true today, and I think even more so. Right? So this is already a critique of identity politics. This is already a critique of pitting people against one another based on either race or gender or sexuality or religion or anything else. So I find those words incredibly important. And so without further ado, please join me in welcoming Eugene Rivers.
Good morning. This is sort of amusing to think about the fact that, as most of you obviously know, since I'm a preacher, Sunday morning is my work day. So, and I'm very thankful for the very kind introduction. I'd like to preface my remarks with a couple of, I think, very important observations. One, I'm going to do something that I've probably never done before, but my point is to, do you have that copy of that? I want to use a document to illustrate the importance of telos, which is not understood fully, in terms of its impact on the planet Earth, as opposed to among the verbose theoreticians who are in too many cases disassociated with, one, the English language, and secondly, the empirical realities of the people who we should be concerned about. This magazine cover came out in 1998. I've got friends here, and they've never seen this. If I were a bigger jerk than I am, I'd probably carry a bunch of these in my suitcase. Come out and hawk it, right? If I were a complete butthole. Now, I'm a minor league butthole. And the relevance of this is that, as a direct result, to a significant degree, of the influence of the Telos Project in the black world, unbeknownst to you folks, there has been a subterranean movement that's been organized and facilitated by the creative work of Telos, which resisted the ideological, inflexible dogma of some obsolete Marxian categories, either in its English or French versions. All right? And so I want you to sort of appreciate the fact that landing on the cover was a result of taking a political theology of Pentecostalism and applying it as a form of liberation theology with an emphasis on serving the poor concretely. There are two major categories that one should consider in this context. One, it is a political theology that has a radical pneumatology, a radical theology of the spirit. All right, so that's a key concept, which is a political concept. That's known. Then secondly, it's very important, secondly, so we have a political theology of the spirit that animates a incarnational theology that says if you're black, put your hips with your lips, right? If you're talking, there should be praxis in the non-stupid sense of the term, right? The New Testament says that by their fruit you will know them, right? And then here again, if I need Marxist jargon, right, I have to talk about praxis, which during the 90s just wore me out. Everything was praxis. I mean, each decade's got some simple-minded gibberish that everybody sort of circulates, masquerading as theory, when it's just poor English, right? You just can't speak the language clearly. And so there was a political pneumatology, right? So that's a key concept. And for the left, there must be an engagement with these categories for reasons that I'll outline in my remarks that will contribute to us mattering. You see, the right and the powers that be, right, treat much of the passes for the left intelligentsia as and this is a fascinating thing about this, right? See, it's one thing to be wrong, but it's worse to be irrelevant. The great crime is that you're irrelevant. At least if you're wrong, I'm going to engage you and give you the respect and decency to engage you. Because in your bad ideas, there's something there that you advocate that is worthy of a response as a respected adversary, as opposed to simply being a pathetic loser who is guilty of the crime of irrelevance. Telos has been remarkably important to me because I start in 70, and there was the phenomenology of blank, one of these early editions, right, which I was willing to forgive you people for because I said, there's some other important stuff. As a result, I followed Paul's work because it was very interesting. There was such a boldness to challenge, shall we say, the ideological hegemony of mechanistic, reductionist forms of Marxism. And the boldness was actually, in fact, I'll tell you this is interesting, Barry. See, Paul Piccone, Sicilian, yes? No, where was he from? Abruzzo. Well, I'll put it this way, it felt black. There was something. Okay, Sicilians are black, so it felt black, right? So my man, Piccone, I said, oh, this is amazing. This is almost like a black dude, right? He's slapping everybody, right? And it was actually quite refreshing, right? So I said, wow, this is actually quite very, he's got that rhythm, and he takes no prisoners, and he would not suffer fools well. So he reminded me of an old black preacher out of the South who would not brook nonsense. And so this was actually very, very important. And so I'm prefacing my remarks to sort of outline for you the importance of the project, which has not been completely understood because, when I get to Harvard, And Ken Johnson, one of my co-conspirators, and we've been doing this thing forever. And when we're at Harvard, we've got the Telos stuff, and there was one sort of amazing edition. I'm pretty sure it was 1976, right, where you published Alvin Gouldner on the revolutionary intelligentsia. I just fell in love with that. It was a brilliant essay on revolutionary intellectuals, right? Now, Gouldner dropped the ball because he didn't understand the religious roots and the political theological dimensions of revolutionary intelligentsia. And had he read Michael Walzer's Revolution of the Saints, he might have corrected that. But that's okay. Gouldner, he did the best he could. It was a fascinating essay. And these black intellectuals at Harvard, who were these just ridiculously intelligent people who were Pentecostals. I want to get to that. Pentecostals. Right, was absolutely astonishing. And so there were a group of intellectuals that followed the work that we did. And this became, from a Telos influence, this became the signal document that led to Bush's faith-based initiatives. It's ridiculous. And here again, we're talking about faith that matters. It may not necessarily be right, but it's getting a significant hearing. And for a black Pentecostal who's conservative on the things that we're conservative about, to be lavish with this image, right? With this idea in 1998 is astonishing. Because this is high liberalism, it's Clinton, the whole 9 yards. But the idea that a post-secular framework can provide the basis for substantive policy initiatives was actually pretty amazing. Now, second item, and in fact, I'll say, only because I love you guys am I doing this, because I've had this stuff around for 21 years and I ain't showed it to nobody ever. Like I said, because I'm not that big a jerk. I'm a jerk. I'm not that big a jerk, right? And so then, on the international side, I want you to understand the breadth and depth of your achievement. And this is my second Newsweek cover story. This is almost embarrassing. And Ken Johnson knows all this stuff, right? Right? This is 2 years later. In fact, Ken was with me when we went to Africa. Yes, Ken went. We went to Africa. And this is relevant, and we'll get to the text. We're doing the work on the gang stuff. Bush is picking up his initiative, and what happens, a scholar by the name of John J. DiIulio, right, hears about the work we're doing with the gangs. So imagine this, and this is shorthand, and I hope you people are literate enough to sort of understand the point I'm about to make. A short version of the story is Jesus meets The Wire in Dorchester. Right, and some of you are looking like, The Wire? Well, you know what, just look at me straight and don't give any indication that you don't know what I'm talking about, right? Because you should be embarrassed, right? So just give me a blank look like, I know what you're talking about, right? What's The Wire? But don't let your face say that, right? Because you can't really be a civilized, cultured individual, right? In the 21st century, you don't know what The Wire is. And you've been hanging out with too many white leftists. You're pathologically ignorant, right? But I'll pray for you because I'm a Pentecostal, right? And then go look up The Wire when you take a break at lunch. You say, what the hell's The Wire, right? And don't ask anybody because I want you to be embarrassed, right? Just look it up. So, from the gang work we did, and this is important because you guys are interwoven into the thread of all this work. I give a presentation at the World Council of Churches in actually the same year. So I go to Harare, Zimbabwe, and I get up and I do my shtick around gangs and faith and policy and programs. This is like a movie. A Catholic priest from Harare comes to see me because they hear there's this guy, Rivers, and he's sort of a big shot in America, and he's talking about gangs, World Council of Churches. He said, listen, Reverend Rivers, I need you to go back to the United States and begin to advocate for the AIDS crisis in Africa. Now, like I said, I'm a jerk, but there are limits to my jerkness, right? And I said to the guy, look, I'm not an ambulance chaser, sort of running around looking for the new thing to, sort of hustle and pimp. That's not my thing. He said to me, He said, Reverend Rivers, if there is not a black advocate to come back to the United States and advocate for Africa regarding the AIDS pandemic, Africa can be reduced to, what do they say, beachfront real estate for Europeans as a result of this sexual holocaust. So I come back to the States. I said, look, man, I've had my 15 minutes, right, with the other one. I had my 15 minutes, I'm good, my ego's good, I'm not that much of a crackhead, we're okay, I don't need to. And DiIulio was a very serious scholar that all of you should sort of look. John J. DiIulio Jr., very serious guy. Imagine Joe Pesci with a PhD from Harvard and has the 12 Italian cousins, right? Right. And so this is my guy, he's my guy, right? And completely seriously said, look, Rivers, I know you're not interested in doing the fame thing and being a movie star and a hot dog and all that, right? But if there's not someone who stands up and advocates in humanitarian grounds that has the moral authority that you have because you stayed put and did your job and are in the hood, this is not going to happen. So I'm really not, all right, man, if you say so, right? An open letter was written to all of the black intellectual leadership, which was an extension of what I'm going to refer to in the article that you cited. Astonishingly, as a result of that, there was an international mobilization that resulted, and this is in the article, in a special session of the Security Council hosted by Ambassador Richard Holbrooke at the United Nations, at which Homeboy was a guest on the floor of the Security Council, and from which George Bush developed the PEPFAR program for dealing with the global AIDS crisis, which was the most substantial intervention on the AIDS crisis by the Republican dude who screwed up with the war, got that, right? And transformed the entire international discussion, because the issue that only a black preacher could put on the table was the idea, the revolutionary idea, that the poor had agency. This is here, I'm about to take y'all someplace. Hence, behavior could not be disconnected from structural, macro-structural, factors. In other words, African men cannot rape 12-year-old girls, right? Infect them with this disease, right? And not be held accountable. And so I was the only one, actually, in the world, which is, as I think about it, it's crazy to me, right? It said publicly, there's no way that Africans can talk about being oppressed and colonized and imperialism and then rape your 12-year-old daughter and get a pass. And obviously nobody white could say anything like that easily. And I went to Africa, wrote an open letter, and said sexual promiscuity may result in reducing the black community in Africa to a biological underclass. That hit so hard that it had reverberations around the planet. And here again, very basic. It was a political theology that animated this humanitarian impulse to do the right thing, working in collaboration with others. And so I go and I say all this to outline and express to you the significance of the project and the pretty remarkable future that you have in terms of helping to reframe in a new way how we are to think about politics. You guys, you've got more going for you than you recognize, right? And now the Bible says a prophet has no honor in his own country. So you're not, it's hard for you to imagine because you've been so close to it. Mary, it's hard for you to understand the revolutionary character of what you achieve, and things are crazy. There are 600 million Pentecostals in the world. And when my boys start reading your stuff, boy, I'm telling you, the world's going to be in a difficult situation. Right? DiIulio called Pentecostalism the soft power of the West. Deep concept. You say, no, the last thing you want is a black man reading a book. That's a problem. And don't let him be a Pentecostal because he believes in the spirit and the power of God. So unlike those secular people who have no future or hope, that dude's all lit up and ready to go. And so I made my pilgrimage down here. I will do it every year because I am totally in. Sidebar, I have a meeting with Bluebrook's people. That's a whole, right? Later on today, but that's another discussion. But I salute you. I salute the project. And so we will, and like I said, this is the first time in my life I've ever brought these things out. I'll let you see later, Doc. To make a point. So, with that said, and I gotta see, being a preacher, I gotta watch the clock. So I've got 30 minutes. How long have I been going? I gotta be careful. Because the preachers, it takes them 15 minutes to clear the throat. But because I'm a Pentecostal, I believe in miracles, which actually you have to do. You know, look, it's a miracle that as a black man, I don't want to kill every white person in the world. Or black people. So let me tell you something, white people, if you're an atheist, you better believe in God. And thank God that we're not coming for you. Because we come for you and we have nothing to lose anyway. So it's not like, you know, we're going to get any justice if we don't do it. So if I'm going to get my ass kicked and you're going to shoot me 12 times and tell me I'm arrested, right? Let me do something to merit it. And so I want you to think about that, right? See, it's a deep thing. You see, it has been black people's devotion to the sacredness of life based in a Christian worldview, which has facilitated their ability to discipline their impulse for despair and nihilism. And without that as the philosophical basis for their existence, y'all would have hell to pay. And then, think about it, right? The black dude ain't got nothing to lose. Let's go out in a blaze. Let's drive up a truck, you know, outside some building where y'all are out there being important big white people and blow the damn thing up. Well, no. So you atheists, thank God. Because you can drink your lattes and talk high theory and be completely irrelevant in complete security. That no one will disturb your irrelevance. Okay? Well, I'm hot today. No, and see, I had these ideas floating around my head around 4:45. I looked up at the clock, right? So I'm trying to figure out how to cut and paste this thing, right? And so, you know, I'm feeling pretty good today, right? But here again, you guys have me speaking during my work hour, right? So I'm supposed to be doing this anyway. So it just so happens, right, that for you non-believers in here, right, the Lord's going to bless you today. So because you've now heard that you got a reason to thank the God you don't believe in, because you ain't got the common sense to understand that there is a primordial motive that keeps your breath in your body. And because I'm black and I thank God because I got breath in my body, I praise Him every day. All right, now I'm going to have everybody say amen. Amen. Even if you don't believe it, just say amen because I said it. All right. Okay. In 1967, Noam Chomsky published an essay in the New York Review of Books on the responsibility of intellectuals. Written in the midst of national turmoil surrounding the U.S. intervention in Southeast Asia, the essay raised a number of disturbing questions about the relationship of intellectuals to power and about the moral and political requirements of the pursuit of truth. Chomsky was inspired by a series of articles by Dwight MacDonald in the journal Politics. Writing some 20 years earlier, MacDonald had focused on the question of war guilt. To what extent, he asked, were the German and Japanese people responsible for the atrocities committed by their governments? He then turned the question back to the American and British people. To what extent were they responsible for the various terror bombings of civilians by the Western democracies and reaching their culmination in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Now, let me pause here, just on that point. Reasonable individuals can differ on that. Reasonable individuals can differ. I mean, you know, Noam now lives in Arizona, right? But he was a mentor when I was a college student. And as I think about this years later, right? Well, no, I don't know. I don't know about the Nagasaki and Hiroshima thing. And I take your point, but I'm not sure if their boys were going to stop. And I've been watching the World War II series by Ken Burns, right? You know, I love Ken Burns. He's my favorite white liberal. I love Ken Burns, right? And so he does an interesting narrative development of the circumstances under which they appeal to the Japanese. Yo, man, put down the guns, y'all. Come on, man. You don't understand. You don't want to do this. You really want to chill on this. You know, and the Japanese say, you know, not no, hell no, right? We're going to keep cutting up and raising hell and doing what we're doing. Now, mind you, now look, man, let me tell you something. Now, you started this thing, right? And we can whip your butt just for that. But we've got lots of, you know, soft, sensitive liberals in our country, and they'll be all over our backs. Now, and what's interesting is that Noam's question is an important, legitimate question, but it may be more complex with a review of the narrative of the events as they proceeded, right? Because the Japanese weren't giving it up, right? And the United States was hammering them. They were hammering them, right? They said, we're going to, and then there was the other ethical question the other way. How many American lives should we continue to sacrifice in a situation that we didn't start, right? And that was a legitimate question. And so the tough call was made, right? And here again, reasonable individuals may differ. But my point is, you know, I'm a Chomsky kid at the time, and it was a powerful, attractive, you know, and Chomsky was the king of the universe during this, the Vietnam War, right? So I just want to flag that to suggest that even with such grandeur, there are nuances and issues are complex, okay? Chomsky pushed Donald's question further. What, he asked, are the special moral responsibilities of intellectuals, given the unique privileges that intellectuals enjoy in Western capitalist democracies? His answer was that intellectuals have a responsibility to speak the truth and expose lies, and a duty to see events in their historical perspective. Chomsky's claims about the Mandarin status of opinion-forming elites and about the elementary obligations that come with status have lost none of their relevance. But circumstances have changed, and those changes carry important implications for the precise character of our current obligations. Now, that was written in '67. We live in a different universe. If things had changed in the preceding 20 years, what could that possibly mean in an age, as Ross Douthat said last Sunday, right? An age of complete decadence. What's the moral responsibility of intellectuals? How do we think through our obligations? And Telos, you're in a unique position to raise the contrary questions that no one will raise on the left, right? And as a result of that, you then have the moral authority to challenge the conservatives. Because both camps have to be challenged with regards to their respective forms of idolatry. Powerful stuff. When I read Chomsky's political and historical essays, I was a young Christian intellectual struggling to understand the role and responsibility of the intelligentsia in an advanced industrial society. Chomsky focused on foreign policy and posed his questions to a predominantly white elite academic policy-based intelligentsia. At that time, I do not recall, this is an important point for me, reading any significant discussion or critical notice of the issues he raised in any major black scholarly journal or book. And this is a very significant thing, right? And it has sort of biographical significance because here's this black Pentecostal kid, right? Walking around, you appreciate this, right? With his tattered edition of The Problems of Freedom and Knowledge, American Mandarin, American Power of the New Mandarin. This is crazy. Talk about a crazy life, right? Problems for reasons of state. So the collection is 4 essays. So I'm a one black kid in North Philadelphia, walking around, sitting up in a White Tower restaurants, 2 o'clock at night, underlining, Chomsky and they're studying meticulously every footnote. See, the footnotes blew my mind. I said, damn, this dude didn't read everything in the world. Damn, boy, right? No, it's fascinating. And there was, and this is sort of an autobiographical point, the level of alienation that I experienced. I'm a 20-year-old kid reading this stuff. Nobody black in the world is reading this damn stuff. Nobody. My guys were talking about, bombing stuff and getting themselves killed and talking trash and Black Panther Party and all of that, right? And I'm thinking about this, and what is interesting is that what protected my life was my Christian faith. And you all must understand that if we are to have any impact on the larger world, you must have a deep and sophisticated understanding of the role and the power of faith that transform the worldview and existence of the wretched of the earth. That faith had me read Chomsky so that I turned down an offer by my junior high school comrades to attempt to kidnap Mayor Frank Rizzo in exchange for Angela Davis. That's the world I came from. Brothers say, yo, Rib, that was my nickname, I was in a gang. But yo, Rib, man, we gonna get that motherfucker, man. Oh, yeah, we gonna serve that bitch, man. They got the shotguns down in the basement, right? Look at it, man. We going to City Hall, man, and we'll pull out that shotgun. We gonna shoot the cop, grab that sucker, put him in the thing, go to Philadelphia at the International Airport, and go to Cuba. Right? I said, you niggas are crazy. That's some bullshit. I'm not messing with none of that. And it ain't because I'm scared. I said, and you see what had happened. That year, Jonathan Jackson, August 1970, some 16-year-old kid who was a protege of Angela Davis. And a sidebar, right? I was once tempted to ask Angela Davis, Angela, who gave Jonathan Jackson the guns? They said they were your guns, right? And my wife slapped me, right? Jackie, she protects me from myself. She says, look, it's a legitimate question, but you're not going to be the skunk at the party and create all kinds of drama, right? And so so here I am as an intellectual, engaging what was the top of the game in terms of the historical and historiographic debate around the purposes and designs of U.S. foreign policy. Faith, a political and philosophical theology, was the normative conceptual framework that gave me my ability to engage this one, and two, to protect myself from the temptations of a form of nihilistic politics which had overtaken the black community and which would result in creating the political basis for the solid majority as the black left ultimately ushered in their antithesis. Right? It's very deep. And so Chomsky's questions are complex and important. I want to suggest to you this morning that Chomsky's points now apply with particular force to the responsibility to tell the truth about the condition of the black poor. And that responsibility bears especially heavily on black intellectuals at elite universities. Now, I want to pause here, again, to provide some larger context for you. I addressed this letter personally to Henry Louis Gates, Cornel West, Anthony Appiah, Bell Hooks, Glenn Lowry, up in their face. I said, from the inner city of Dorchester, where my house had been shot into 2 times and burglarized 6 times, but because of a Christian faith which was revolutionary in its essence. What is, in the book of James, 1st chapter, 27th verse, and this is perfect religion. This is what God considers perfect religion. That you care for the widow and the orphan in their distress, and remain uncontaminated by the forces of the market. That's my little River Stand version. Let's do that in there, right? From sin, the market, in this case. For as a privileged minority, black intellectuals have the leisure, the facilities, and the training to seek the truth lying behind the veil of distortion and ideology and class interest through which the events of current history are presented to us. Right? So, this letter was published in the Boston Review. Josh Cohen, political philosopher, theorist, Rawlsian guy, him and Joel Rogers, did a, Democratic theorist, you guys know him, convened a meeting. See, I've led a wild life. 2,000 people showed up, hanging from the rafters at the Kennedy School of Kennedy School. I had written it because my house had been shot up, and none of the big black talkers had showed up. None of the revolutionary, the black talk, all the secular black left, none of those Negroes showed up. So I'm saying, I don't want to hear this crap. We're down here, my wife, here's some revolutionary faith. My wife, upper middle class Jamaican woman, graduated at the top of her class at the Immaculate, I forget the name of the other school, in Jamaica, right? She comes to Harvard. She spent her life every Saturday morning serving the poor after she studied liberation theology and graduated Phi Beta Kappa Summa. She was Phi Beta Kappa her junior year. Summa, doing some absolutely ridiculous mathematical psychology, right? Go figure, right? And her convictions were revolutionary. And here again, to all of you here, the key to the game over the next 20 years is how the left matures and understands that you got it wrong, right? You got it wrong. And this whole faith thing is philosophically and politically deeper because it is the only thing that has the capacity to speak to the existential crisis of the very poor. You want to get these crazy white boys, they're all lit up. You better get us with Jesus. Oh, that's not a joke. Let me tell you something. Those alienated working class white men need to have a vision spoken to them that says that they're a human being and not just a pathetic loser asshole with bad teeth and a bad attitude. Right? Being patronized, if that, by the Martha's Vineyard, Aspen Institute, Davos wing of the world. Because those white boys got a case, right? And I'm a black nationalist. But I respect and honor the integrity because, as Ken talked about in his thing on subsidiarity, black nationalism is simply the Catholic concept of subsidiarity applied to black people. It's not essentialist. I don't need an essentialist thing to justify the fact that I'm a community because I didn't have any other options and the black church was the source of moral and cultural authority. And I love everyone. In fact, I'm working with some black preachers who are going to identify a poor working class white neighborhood to go do outreach to angry white males to let them know that they're loved and respected. Now this is a deep thing here. And it will take that kind of revolutionary commitment to have some black dudes go deal with some cats that are actually racist. Some of them said, I don't like you a nigga because you're a nigger. Now the reason I don't like you as a nigga is that I think that people think you're better than me. And because of my own inferiority complex, I think you're better than me. And I haven't been loved. All right. I got 10 minutes when you got it. All right. Does that sound right? 10 minutes? Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. That's good. with a white man over watching the time. Good right. All right, so I've got this last section, which is the description of the nature of the crisis which extends now. And I have a whole Mike Davis section, but we can't get to that today, right? Okay, get this, y'all. Today, more than 10 million Americans now face a crisis of catastrophic proportions. And let me tell you something, you young white people, you young ones, right? Resist the temptation to become insular and white in a xenophobic parochial way. Resist that temptation. There's a temptation to get caught up in a lot of theoretical mumbo jumbo that has no intrinsic analytical conceptual utility. Beyond showing off, in front of your latte in a cafe and pulling out your completely irrelevant Foucauldian demand, Derrida, Lacan, right? All of that, right? That's all bullshit, right? That's all bullshit, right? That's not serious, right? No, I just had some, oh, that's so embarrassing. Oh, how can you say that, right? It's true, right? All right, let's go. All right, 10 minutes, right? Get this, y'all. Life in the major post-industrial centers in the United States is generally poor, nasty, brutish, and short. It is often a choice. Watch the life now. A choice between suffering and abject misery. Those are the options. Outside of faith and a source which is cognitive and existential transcendence. Life, that's our choices. The prospect for black males are perhaps a bit more exciting. There is, of course, death due to homicide or drug-related HIV infection. And then, good news, there is incarceration, which provides an opportunity to refine the skills required for a career of criminality. Gets better. In all this horror, there is a certain depraved consistency. For the persistent poverty of black and brown urban poor serves a variety of ideological functions. Black people are useful whatever condition they're in. If they're good, they're an exception and to the rule. If they're bad, I told you so. They can't win for losing. Or if they are excellent, it's obviously affirmative action, and we need to eliminate that, right? And it's a great thing with Jackie. Jackie didn't know nothing about no affirmative action, right? And my wife and I are driving around, right, about maybe 9 months ago. We were driving around, right? I don't know why it jumped in my mind, but it's River's mind, right? So anything jumps in his mind, right? So I said, sweetie pie, what was your SAT score? Right? And she's just very humble. 1560? I said, whoa. Out of a 1600 system, your SAT score was 1560? I said, child, that's illegal. How do you, 1560? That's like a perfect score, baby. What are we doing here? Right? My point is, there are these examples that have existed of black excellence, but the polarization is so bizarre that if a black person performs, you can't win. If you're a criminal, lock him up and kill him. If you're excellent, well, that was affirmative action. All right? So I just want to give you a picture as I bring this thing in. In all this, there's a depraved consistency. Conservative policy elites, whether Republican or Democratic, perceive correctly that poor blacks are a politically disposable population. In fact, the suffering, nihilism, and decay associated with the tragic circumstances of the urban poor can, and in view of conservatives, should be exploited to ensure continued political dominance. The logic is simple. Because inner city blacks are a politically vulnerable the right can blame them for anti-Semitism, crime, riots, the Republicans, the Democrats, David Duke, sin, sex, and AIDS. Because the American political arena is in such an advanced state of decomposition, the absurdity of the argument will carry no political cost. Now, you're going to give me 5 minutes to bring this thing in, just so you have some conceptual framework for how we are to engage where we are. Because there is a an international piece of this that we're not going to get into. That'll be the next one, where I'm building on the work of Mike Davis, the big urban sociologist, social theorist. He wrote an article in New Left Review in 2004, well, Planet of the Slums. It's a book, but the better version is the essay. In Planet of the Slums, Professor, there is an astonishing section entitled Marx and the Holy Ghost. And he does one of the most brilliant, Planet of the Slums, New Left Review, 2004. He does the most brilliant, breathtaking exposition on the fact that the only rational response that the poorest of the poor will have will be faith. In this case, it will be the Pentecostals. And that there is a global Pentecostal movement in the favelas, right? In the prisons. There's one case in Guatemala where they have 1,000 prisoners in this Guatemalan jail, and you can imagine what it looks like. And the power of faith is expressed in the fact that some jailhouse prisoners took over. There were pastors, took over the prison, and now govern the prison as a church, a Pentecostal church. Crime is down, and this is not like happy talk. In other words, there is a power of faith that is so absolutely extraordinary and unbeknownst to people. I'm in Santiago, Chile, talking to some fancy Pinochet, fancy Europeans who thought they were Germans. That's another discussion, right? And at some point, we get into a discussion. This is what I'm bringing in. We get into a discussion about Pentecostalism. They're all very fancy people, wearing what they call Belgian loafers, tailor-made, not off the rack, right? So everybody's, right? So we get into a discussion about religion. So I asked them, I said, well, what about the churches? And they're all kind of Pinochet Roman Catholics, right? And they said, well, there's no religion. I mean, what do you mean? Pentecostals, what's that? Right? I said, you're joking, right? No religion. I say, I'll tell you what. I've never been to this country. I don't know a soul in this country. Not one. You give me 2 hours, and I'm going to find the Pentecostal church in Santiago, Chile, real quick. Guy's a very curious guy, you're French go to, all that, right? And it was a conservative Pinochet think tank, right? Right? So they send out, guy comes back. He says, yes, well, apparently, Seymour, so-and-so, there is a evangelical church of some size. Now, that's code. When in South and Central America, when they say evangelical, they really mean Pentecostals. Because those are the ones that have got bucket down the poor, right? So, we're going to visit them. Now, I've been running around with these people all week. I wanted to stay in on Sunday, not have to work, right? And watch CNN and some football games. What was it? I was in a Ritz-Carlton hotel. So, man, I'm not going. Shit, I'm gonna lay back, man, order a steak. They said, oh no, we're going to church. So these guys show up. We go to the church. This was the teeny church, 500 people. And there were all these Mapuche Indians from the mountains. And all little teeny people, hallelujah, hallelujah, right? And it blew the people's minds. It's an important point, right? So then, the father of the pastor says, there is one of my Pentecostal brothers yesterday, you gotta come to church tonight. I said, I go to church tonight. So, they come pick me up and disturb my rest, and I gotta go out to this damn church, which was a factory building. We walk into this poorly heated building where the pastor sat on the pulpit in his overcoat. There were 20,000 people on a 6 o'clock service. And these Mapuche Indians up there just praising the Lord. Then they insisted that I come up because my bishop was a friend of that guy. The point is obvious. There is a revolutionary movement, which is complex, heterogeneous, the whole thing, that the politics of Telos can critically engage because you are the most, and have been the most sophisticated squad interrogating the various Marxian and radical theoretical traditions. And you must understand the importance of that. I'm bringing this in. This is it. I won't read you the portions of Mike Davis. I will simply encourage the young people. Planet of the Slums. The section on Marx and the Holy Ghost. Because, young people, we are now in a post-secular epoch. The left had a run, and they crashed and burned. Right? They crashed and burned. By 1979, the game was over. And I'll leave with these 3 examples. There have been a couple of guys that have written some very fascinating historical sociological texts. And like 79 is the date. They say 1979, God kicked the Marxist ass in Afghanistan. In other words, the Afghans defeated the Russians. Was it 78, 79, right? You know, it's the Russian machine, and a bunch of towelhead dudes who got their God thing defeat the Russians. In Poland, a cardinal, yes? No? What was his original? He's JP2 to me. Wojtyła is organizing, and the Catholics are organizing workers in Poland. Amazing event, right? In Iran, the foreign policy establishment, which are all those very fancy people, did not see the religion thing coming. To your credit, you guys have begun to explore this subterranean world that was growing. I conclude with this. There's a historical opportunity for Telos to reassert its authority as one of the philosophically and politically most compelling periodicals in the current historical context. And I salute you, I thank you for the extraordinary stuff that you've done, and God bless you. Thank you very much.
Use the hour.
Oh, did I?
Yes.
Look at that. You know what I'm saying? Bring the black guy in. It hurts him all the time.
This is how 30 minutes turns into 60. It was
Is that true? Is that right?
It was absolutely magical, and I think I don't just speak on behalf of myself or the team. I think everyone, just thanking you for your incredible generosity and this, vitality that you've injected this morning. And can I thank you for being such a good friend of Telos? So please join me in thanking you.